Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
My Bigfoot sightings all happened in Virginia. It all started when I was about 4 years old. We lived in the small town of Troutdale, Virginia. We had a house that was up on the side of a mountain, probably a good half mile away from anybody else, surrounded by national forest. We was isolated. And really, the only neighbor that we did have didn't live at her house during the week. She'd come over on the weekend. So really, we didn't have probably a person around within a mile, and then maybe 2 or 3 miles to the next person. But one night, I got up to go use the bathroom. We didn't have an indoor plumbing, so ours was go to the outhouse or, just go out in the yard to pee. We also didn't have no street lights around, so this is what makes it a little bit more weirder. I got up to go pee. It was dark outside, and to go to the back door, had to bypass one of our kitchen windows. And normally I'd look out because I was scared of bears. I've watched too many killer bear movies when I was little. So I'm looking out the window to see if there's anything out in the yard, and I couldn't look out the window. Something was blocking my view. I couldn't tell what it was. I just stopped for a moment and was looking, and then this thing bent down to look into the window with what I like to call red fire coal looking eyes. I mean, it was that orangey red color. They blinked. I couldn't make out the shape of the face of nothing. I could just tell that it was this massive thing in front of the window with 2 big red eyes looking at me. I felt like 2 or 3 seconds or 2 or 3 hours. It just, I don't know. It probably wouldn't, but a second. And ran and screaming and jumped in bed with my grandpa. And of course, this woke everybody up. And, they come in there, what's wrong, Andy? And I told them I seen something in the window. And of course, being that young, 4 years old or so, nobody really believed me when I told them I seen 2 big red eyes looking at me in the window. Except for my grandpa. My grandpa, he knew I seen something. He knew I wasn't dreaming. That was another thing. He's like, he couldn't have been dreaming unless he's sleepwalking, but because he wasn't in the bed and he jumped in the bed, that's what woke me up with his screaming and everything. So, next morning, there's no sign out there. The ground around the house was hard packed, grass growing and everything. There wasn't going to be no tracks or nothing there, but looking back on it after everything, I realized, like I said, I know there ain't no tracks there. So they wouldn't, you're not going to leave tracks with hard packed ground. And, doesn't surprise me. Nobody believed me. But now I don't care because I know what I saw. It's just the way I've heard other people describe it with the eyes, the mass of it. The window measures 34 or 32 to 34 inches wide, and it blocked it out completely. The other thing, the eyes was not reflecting light. There was no light on in the house. The creature, the Bigfoot, was standing on the side of the house where the moonlight couldn't hit it. And like I said, we had no street lights or nothing around, so this was not a reflection. These eyes were bioluminescent or whatever term you would use for it, I guess. Moving on, I say this happened in the spring. I can't remember if it was the spring or early summer, but I know by late summer, early fall, the hayfield had been cut, and there was some kin people over visiting us, and us cousins were out playing in the hayfield, throwing rocks up and watching the bats chase the rocks around and everything. And we was running around playing tag and all that. And one of us, might have been me, I can't remember exactly who, but somebody spotted something down in the holler at the edge of the road looking at us. And this thing was, featureless except for the shape and the two red eyes. It looked like a man shape. It was definitely standing there like a man, but it was much bigger. The way I tell people is a young Andre the Giant, because he was more broader in the shoulders and kind of tapered down towards the hips. The hips stuck out a little bit, but not as broad as the shoulders. He was too dark and too distant, or too far in the distance to make out any kind of detailed shape to it. Anyhow, we stopped playing and was looking right at it, and it was looking at us. We was watching it. You could see the eyes blinking again. And after about 30 seconds, it stopped looking at us and turned its head slightly and pivoted its body away to walk off down into the holler where the more woods, and of course it was darker in the hollow. But what really got me was it stepped over a fence that was about 48 inches high. It didn't straddle it. It just one step crossed over it. And went off down the holler, and of course we run back to our parents telling them, we seen this and seen that, but nobody believes kids like that. And I never really thought enough of it like a devil or a boogeyman or something like that. Like I said, the term Sasquatch, I've never heard of it. Bigfoot was just something they named the monster truck all after. I've never seen no Patterson videos or nothing, or maybe the Bionic Man and Andre the Giant. But it was quite a few years later that we noticed that they were rocks on top of the house there, small rocks. The biggest one may be the size of a golf ball. The other one, most of them were about the size of marble. but no one, my brother, my sister, and myself, of course, got blamed for throwing the rocks on top of the house. But we knew better than that, because that ended up getting, your tail end busted for that. And there was about 3 or 4 years after that. I might have been 10 or 12. I remember we was going coon hunting one night, same location, just out from the house, a couple miles into the national forest, and we come to a spot where a recent ice storm had done some tree damage, and there was a lot of limbs laying in the road, and the dogs had stopped there. And we thought that was pretty weird, because most of the time the dogs stayed a little bit ahead of us and everything. And while we was trying to figure out how to go around the brush pile or laps, there was this rock come flying from the other side and landed next to us. Now, we didn't really pay much attention because we was more focused on what was wrong with the dogs and how to get around this brush pile. And then a second rock come, and with the light that we had, I seen it, and it actually hit me in the chest, not hard, but just, enough, like made a little poop, and it trembled down, and I caught it in my hand, and it was about the size of a cherry tomato. And I was like, who's throwing rocks at us? Who's out here on this property, and everything? Because even though it's national forest, really nobody come that far back there except for us, or, some old timers that used to roam those hills. But there was no tracks or nothing. Nobody come in. They'd have to come by our house to take the easy route, and nobody had been by there in quite a while. So, what else throws rocks, anyhow, we finally get the dogs to, trying to get them to go around the brush pile and everything. And we're looking, who's throwing rocks, and everything. And never did see the rock thrower. Never heard nothing moving. And the dogs just stayed funny. They didn't want to leave our sides. They didn't want to go out and hunt and everything. And, we eventually just gave up and come back home. And that's when all this, I would say, I'm still naive to the Bigfoot phenomenon. By then, of course, I've read stories of Sasquatch, doing this and that. And I don't know. I think the child in me wanted to believe, and, but the logic, oh, yeah, all these other people, right, there's no such thing, and everything. But still, all this was not attributed to Bigfoot until the time I went turkey hunting by myself. And I was sitting under this big pine tree in a pretty thick part, trying to listen for a turkey to gobbler. And I was messing with my calls, and, didn't hear no turkeys, but I heard something down below me, below the road, and that really thick stuff started breaking. I don't know if it was stepping on stuff or if it was snapping stuff that was growing up, but it was making its presence known. And I'm like, oh, there's a bear, By now I've grown up enough to know that, more than likely a black bear isn't going to bother you unless it's a mama with cubs or you surprise it on its food stash. This was something like an intimidation, and I thought, oh, Lord, it's probably a mama bear or something, And so I stood up, and I'm about 6'1", so, I might have been 6 foot. I think I topped out there about around 15 or so. Didn't really grow much after that, but I couldn't see over the brush. I couldn't see through the brush, but I could see the brush moving. And this thing got within 30 yards of me, and it kept snapping, whatever. Like I said, I don't know if it was on the ground or maybe it was both, but it also started making a and I thought, okay, that might be a bear right there. Not really accustomed to hearing bear noises and everything, but it should have walked out in front of me at one point if it was a bear, but it never did. Because it got to the edge of the road and it didn't stop. It stayed in the really thick stuff, and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird because bear, if it's trying to get away from me, that's its route to go. It needs to go across the road and up the holler. It gets more suitable for a bear than a human walking up through there. So, I just hightailed it out the other way, basically. It's like, I'm not going out that way. I'll take the long way around and, come back another day and see if I see bear tracks or turkey tracks or whatever. But in this one area that happened in is where the first time I come across a very peculiar smell, and I can't quite describe it. I've heard different people, trying to describe it. And it's like a mysterious smell of decay and rotten eggs and, deceased animals. But it's all of them still don't quite cover what the smell is. And the night that it happened, I was coming back through from setting up trail cameras for trying to get ready for deer season, and it hit me very suddenly. It wasn't like I started getting little smells of it. It was just, little sniffs of it. It was more of walking along and just suddenly, bam, wow, what is that smell? Ugh. And they tell me that, bear smell, and, of course it wasn't a skunk, and I was like, well, maybe that's a bear or something, and I'm like, man, I must be right on top of it. So, I started talking out loud and everything, and the smell just went away suddenly. I mean, it was about as quick as it come. It was about as quick as it left. And I thought, well, that was awful weird. But I walked on back to the house there. By this time, we had quit living there. We had moved further down into town. But we still, went up there at that place and done our hunting. And, sometimes just to get away from people, we'd stay up there. So I made it back to the house and nothing really happened that night. I stayed up there, and dogs, we kept dogs and chickens and stuff up there, had livestock, and none of this stuff was ever messed with this whole entire time. I mean, we had a barn that had corn in it, and nothing ever got into it but mice. Not even a bear that walked right by it, and nothing. So there's some weird stuff that happens that can't really explain on that. But several years later, I'd done married, and me and my first wife both lost our jobs at the same time, basically, and didn't really have any bright outlook, because the economy wasn't doing too good. So me and her decided to move up there for a little while to save back some money. Up there a couple of nights, we noticed that same smell. She never smelled it, but she could smell it too. That smell would come around the house, and it would start strong and end suddenly, but sometimes it would last, 15 to 30 minutes, or maybe 10 minutes to 15 minutes, and it got really weird. We had some goats that were out in that barn, and when that smell was around, the goats wouldn't go in that barn. I don't know if there was something out there. I tried to be brave one night and walk out there and try to see what it was, but the closer I got, the more the hair on the back of my neck starts standing up, and I got this feeling that this is not a good idea. So I turned around and went back in the house. Within a week or two after that, there was a snow that happened, and me and her had walked out the mountain to just look for deer signs, maybe a bear track or something, because bears around here don't really hibernate. They just, if it gets nasty weather, they'll den up somewhere, and when it warms up a little bit, they come back out and eat and stuff. So we was looking around for signs, and, we seen some deer tracks and coyote tracks and turkey sign and everything. But we were coming back close to the house, and off into this really thick ivy and laurel patch came this, sounded almost like a combination jailbreak jet engine roar. I mean, I can't mimic it, but it was or something. I don't know, and at the time that we heard it, we turned and looked in the direction over there. You couldn't see what it was, but whatever it was big enough to start moving some good size tree limbs. They, not tree limbs, trees themselves. I say they was about the size of 2-liter pop bottles, and you could see it going up the ridge by, you couldn't see it, but you could see the direction it was going up the ridge by the snow being shook off of the trees as it went through them, and was like, what was that? And, I told her, well, it was a bear, but in my mind, I'm like, I have no idea what that was, but I'm pretty sure that's not a bear. I've never felt a bear's roar, and you could feel this. I mean, it was more like it hit you, and you felt it in the ground. It shook me up pretty good. I went back to the house and made sure I had a gun loaded from then on. But, eventually we moved off there, didn't have any more things at the time happening. There was a few instances where you get that funny feeling. I deer hunt up there a lot, a turkey hunt up there a lot, and you get that weird feeling that something's watching you. And, as years went on, started watching some programs, finding Bigfoot, and kind of got into that as far as, okay, I've heard those noises in the woods. I've heard, those whistles that I thought was somebody and never could see the person, and it wasn't like no hunt season. Shouldn't have been nobody hiding, So, it become weird why, if you don't need to be hiding, why would you? Never had no more rocks thrown at me, but did have some rocks placed in weird places that wasn't there the day before. No, I normally, when I hunt, if I'm not fortunate enough to capture some game, I stay from daylight to dark. I went in one morning and there was a rock laying up on side the bank. And when I come back, it was laying there in the road with another rock stacked on top of it. Now, this was a pretty good sized rock to be like basketball size. So just to play a joke on somebody to pick up that rock and move it, 5 yards and then bring in another rock and just sit on it, just seemed a little weird, but, could have been somebody. But it was afterwards that I began to think that this is a Sasquatch instead of, a human, because I started getting weird vibes at times. I'd be walking along and I'd have sort of like on the edge of the hearing, I could hear like rocks being clacked together. And I know for a fact that I was the only one on that mountain. There was nobody else up there unless they walked in a long ways, and I doubt that. They also happen in like, one would be on one side of the holler and then the other one would be on the other side of the holler. Just little over here and everything. So just like reading up on some stuff. Okay, I know Sasquatch does that. Maybe he is a Sasquatch up there. Things got really interesting though when the TV show Mountain Monsters come on. I really loved that show. I mean, do I believe he really chasing Bigfoot? No. Or anything else. It's just a good show. Us old hillbillies, getting a star on something. But, one night my cousin, he suggested we go looking for Bigfoot. And I'm like, sure, we'll go, And a slightly different side of the mountain I took him to, because I didn't want to go in there and ruin any of my deer hunting. We went up this old trail that's on the other side of the mountain that leads back to the same place I'm talking about. I mean, it's just less than a mile away. But we're moving along, and we come to the top of one switchback and decided to stop there and listen, and he heard it and said it. I was thinking it, but they was a whistle. I mean, it was a human whistle. I don't whistle very well, so, but it was very clear, and it was like, okay, you heard that. And I'm like, yeah, I heard it. It's right over here. So we sat there, and you could make out the sounds of something kind of like shuffling its feet, but not going nowhere. But we couldn't see nothing, didn't hear anything else. After about 30 minutes, so we decided to walk on. Maybe it was a night bird or something, but never heard one of those birds make that noise before. And we eventually get about halfway up the mountain, and we decided to stop again. Yeah. We sat there maybe 20, 30 minutes, and I've got some night vision equipment, the cheaper stuff. Everything I got's cheap. So I was listening, and trying to look around and everything. Now, this night vision monocular worked fine. I've used it for, not deer hunting, but, just looking at deer at nighttime when they move through the fields and everything, So I know it worked fine. Never acted up on me or nothing until this night. And what happened was we was sitting there laughing, joking about stuff that happened in childhood and everything, games we used to play, and a hoot owl started hooting were almost in a tree right above us. Now, this was an owl, and it was going, hoo, hoo, like owls do. And for fun, I started hooting back at it. And it would hoot, and I'd hoot, and then there was a second owl about 300 yards away. It started hooting, and so it was kind of funny that the three of us were going backwards and forwards, and for some reason I made some weird noise, and the top of the mountain sort of erupted with this. Best way I can describe it is chimp chatter. Almost if it, way too powerful to be what I would think a chimp sounds like. Now, I've never been around chimps in a jungle outdoor setting, so I don't know. They may be incredibly loud. The only chimps I've ever seen is in a zoo, but whatever it was not a coyote yelping. It was not foxes. It was not bobcats. I've heard all of them. It wasn't, a screech owl or nothing like that. It was, it sounded like two chimps, because one started and then the other one started almost a second behind it. And they were in two different spots. One was on one ridge and one was on the other ridge. And they started out, just, but a very high pitch jabber, it didn't sound human at all. They come off of the mountain towards us. You couldn't hear them crashing through the trees or nothing like that. It wasn't like that, but the sounds, the chatter got closer and closer. And they was coming at a pretty good speed, but very quietly, except for the chattering. And I'd say within 10 minutes, they were within 100 yards of us after probably traveling, 500 yards or more. My cousin now, he had a look of pure terror on his face, and I'm pretty sure I had too. We both had guns because it was always a chance we might have run across a coyote or something like that, or, a bear or something, they'd scare it off. But I don't know if he would been trustworthy enough to actually hold that gun too much, because the boy was very, very scared. He was shaking, and I'm looking around like we're about to get something on us. And I thought to myself, I was like, okay, I need to get that night vision now. Maybe I can see what it is. Maybe it is coyotes. So I get the night vision out, and I turn it on, and for a split second it worked, and then it just went to like the fuzziness on TV when you don't get a good reception, or the squiggly lines, or it just wasn't working. It turned on, but you could see nothing. The cap was off of it. Just couldn't see nothing. And I told him, I said, we're screwed. I said, whatever it is, it'll be on top of us and we won't know it. And about the time I said that, out in the path in front of us, about 50 yards, I seen this dark shape move from left to right and from one thicket to the other across this path. Now, it stepped across this path. This path is as wide as a car, because there used to be an old Jeep trail up through there that they ride horses and stuff. And so it's cleaned out pretty good. And it's still about the same width as it used to be. But whatever it was made one step across into the thicket. And it was human shape. Now, again, can't tell you if it had long fur or short fur, or, even what color the fur could have been, or hair, or whatever. It just, too dark to tell. And everything got really quiet after that. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. No owls, no insects, nothing. And I was like, let's get out of here. So we walked our way back, quietly, and really didn't say too much to each other. And, we'd stop occasionally to look and see if anything, and mostly trying to hear if something was following us. But we never did hear nothing. And we was probably about a mile back in the mountain. And we got back to the vehicle, and of course, turning the lights on and everything. And I tried the camera, the night vision camera, and it worked perfectly fine. And it works perfectly fine to this day. It never messed up on me again. That's when I was like, okay, I've heard of, this Bigfoot stuff messing with electronics and everything. I'm pretty well sure that it just messed with our camera there, and I right then I was like, I'm done with night investigation because it's just too much. I never was too much into doing wood knocks or anything like that, or whoops or anything. I mean, I'd done a few before, but what are you saying when you do that? It's like me, trying to talk Russian to a Russian person. I don't know Russian. I might be insulting them. So why would I want to insult a massive creature like this? So then again, didn't really go back up in that part of the mountain until about 2 years ago. Did have an incident where I was in a different part of the county, next to a wildlife management area, and I'd never seen anything or heard anything but that same smell. There was a place in particular, it seemed like the mornings after the Monday mornings we done trash pickup, and the Monday mornings that we went to pick trash up there, that smell was around. I don't know if that was a popular place for as much trash was around there. I mean, it seemed like a lot of people liked to hang out in that area, but it just, what was weird is it started the season, when people would come in there, the smell wasn't there. And then after a few weeks, the smell was there, and it persists. Even though the number of people after the 4th of July dropped off dramatically, the smell still was around there. But you could go up there during different days of the week and not ever smell it. And just asking some of the guys that worked over there all the time for a number of years if they ever smelled it, and they was like, yeah. We never could track down what it was. They first thought that it was because of decaying leaves piled around in there, and there's a pretty good thicket of just laurel and small scrubs and everything. It's really hard to get through. But they said, we got in there and we could not smell it except for back around over there, not at the trash cans, but off up in the woods just a little bit where it started getting thicker and thicker. So I was like, oh, you might have something here. Of course, got laughed at for thinking that it was a Sasquatch, even though there was a report a couple of years later after that in Mendota, Virginia, of seeing a Sasquatch. I think it might have been a video of it crossing or supposedly crossing, but I've talked to some people that actually said that they seen something. They just would never come out to say what it was. They just like, well, it looked like a man, but it was covered in fur. bears don't walk like man. And I'm like, I don't know. I'd have to been there to see it, you know. So I really started ramping up, getting into Bigfoot and everything, and especially after Les Stroud come out with his series of, you know, okay, trying to look at it, okay, not everything's a Bigfoot, not every sound's a Bigfoot. You know, other animals do make noises and stuff, so let me get out here and look and stuff. And I come across some footprints. I still don't know if they wasn't a big bear. We do occasionally get some big black bear around here. Not probably 5 miles away from the area I'm talking about. There was over a 650-pound black bear killed for this part of the state, and that's a big bear. And you know, probably not more than 20 miles away over in North Carolina, there's been 750-pound, almost 800-pound black bear killed. So it's rare to get a bear that big, but they do happen around here. The foot track that I measured was about 7 inches across and appeared to be about 14 inches long, but I couldn't tell too well because of where it was in part mud, and then the debris from the forest was in the other part. And the only really good impression it made was the 5 toes, but you could see where it looked like it was a whole foot. But went on further past that and found a 17-inch track that had been made previously, that it was been washed out, but the depth of it was 3 inches deep. And I'm like, okay, this was, you know, what else would make this track? This is something heavy. I mean, it wasn't no bear. Bear don't have no 17-inch long foot. It couldn't have been a double step, because even then, I don't think a bear would have made a 17-inch long step. The width was a little decayed out, but it looked to be about 7 to 8 inches itself. I didn't carry no plaster with me. Actually went back and tried to cast the toes, but don't know exactly how to do that. I'm not practice it enough, so my mix come out too dry and it just crumbled up instead of making a cast. And about the same area again, a couple months later, I was out setting up trail cameras and trying to hang a tree stand when I started getting the vibe that I was being watched. And then I got hit with what I believe is infrasound. I got really dizzy, lightheaded, just nervous. Had to sit down. But at the same time, when I sit down, I felt it was almost compelling to get back up and leap. And that's exactly what I done. And it was right after I topped over a hill and left that area to where I couldn't see back towards that area, I started feeling better. And within 2 or 3 minutes of leaving that spot and being outside of it, I just felt so much better. I wondered what that was, and I was talking to another gentleman, and he said that sounded like what somebody told him the infrasound that they use was. I think the closest besides the window part that I ever come to one was I was coming out deer hunting one night, and one area it gets pretty thick. The path does. It's some old hemlocks that had come down to beetle kill, but they just new sprouts coming up and shoots and everything. So it gets pretty thick in there. Trying to be very protective of hemlocks. It's one of my favorite trees. So I don't do a lot of bush cutting or brush cutting through there. I just, go ahead and push it out of the way and everything. But like I said, it gets really thick right through there. And I was daydreaming, walking out and moving along, and I had this low growl grunt. It was about didn't hear it as much as I felt it push me on my chest. It wouldn't literally touched me, but something, whatever the low frequency growl it used, made me take notice real quick and took 2 or 3 steps back. And then this thing took 2 or 3 steps, jumped off an embankment down into like I wouldn't call it a creek. It might be an old drainage or something, there ain't hardly any water in there. And then I heard it jump again, and then it started up an embankment. And I mean, this thing was moving along and cracking some big stuff. I first thought it was a bear, and I was like, okay, about walked out right up on a bear. That's a bad situation to be in, because I'd seen bears there a couple of days before then, just not right at that area. So I thought, okay, next day I'll come back and just make sure. Well, I come back next day and I start smelling the smell again. But okay, I got a gun. It's daylight. I'm going to go look. So I started getting there, and I literally had to get on hands and knees in some spots. And I could see where the thing come down and went up the hill, but I couldn't make nothing out of it too good. It looked like, something dug its way up with all 4 paws, but then when it got up next to the top, it just looked like it was more of a bipedal. You could just see, if you've done any tracking, animals and stuff, when they're in the running and stuff, you can kind of tell where they go. If they turn up the leaves, they might not leave a track per se, but the leaves will be turned over, or grass will be bent or whatever. So I tracked it for a ways, and then it started heading off into the really thick, steep part, and I thought, okay, I don't need to go no further. I don't know if that was a bear or what, and beginning to believe it was Sasquatch. And I think it was just, curious of why I was doing what I was doing. I don't know if it's the same Sasquatch or a different Sasquatch that happened when I was younger. Recently, me and my friend have started doing more investigating stuff and starting to get into seeing tree structures. Some of them are just more or less arches and some X's. Don't really get the whole tree structures that are, this tree shoved up in here and 2 other ones twisted in another way and everything, and where these 5 or 6 trees in there. Most time it's just 2 or 3, but they're so odd the way they're in there. You're like, okay, this is a different tree from that over there, so something's had to carry it over here. But how would a human got it 10 foot up there without it being, they'd have to bring a ladder with them? And who's going to take a ladder, 2 miles back in the woods off of a trail somewhere? It's one of them things that don't make sense. We have had a few yelps and whoops and stuff. Never really had the audio to try to capture it. Also, we've not really come across no tracks that, you can say, okay, I'm going to take a picture of, or, and say, hey, here it is. You can't rule out a bear, but then at the same time, what you can see with your eyes sometimes don't show up on the camera as well. And you're looking like, that's an awful big, long bear track. And whatever it was had some weight on it because, it went down and, it made an impression that I couldn't, stomp and make. So, what is making that? Um, so far, that's been about it. We come across a kill. It was a deer kill. Where the only thing that remained was just the fur and the skin. The bones were gone. It looked like it had been like just skinned out there and left the fur. Way it happened, where it happened, just didn't make sense. If a human had shot a deer there and decided to pack it out, they normally would leave behind. If you don't have to carry no weight, there's no use carrying it. Most of the time deer ribs don't have enough meat of them to carry them a mile and a half back out when you got the hindquarters, the tenderloin, and front shoulders, maybe the neck. We found nothing, no skeleton, no hooves, no nothing, but just deer fur. And it didn't look like typical coyotes been scavenging on it. It was just all in one little spot. Where the body of the deer probably lay. There was another little tiny bit, about 5 foot up above it, that maybe was where it was first brought down. Bears normally and cats normally cover up their kill or make a cache out of it. A bear will a lot of times be very close by. There was no sign of no bears coming off because this is a very steep gully that the deer was laying in next to some archways and X's. Also, that's the cats. Like I said, they normally cover it up. This wasn't covered at all. But again, no bones at all. You couldn't really even tell where there was any entrails or anything left because normally after like a human kill, when they gut it and everything, you can go back and you can kind of tell where the waste product was, the bowels and everything, because not many animals will eat the contents of the bowels. They might, pick around on some of the organs or something like that, but that's about it. So that's been pretty eye-opening right there. In this one area, it's on the same mountain, it's just on a different side of it. So there's a connection there of where are they crossing at. I would like to find out. I've been looking a lot too at the Native American marker trees, where they take the trees when they was growing up and they would bend them into a certain shape. Normally it comes up, makes an L shape. The ends are burnt in one place a lot of times. Now these trees are old trees. They probably hasn't been no Indian, Native American maybe, I should say, doing this around here for 300 years or so. But these trees are also pretty old. The timelines can match up. And one of the theories I have is that I don't know if the Indian, they most time followed the game. And so, could there be a coincidence between the marker trees and the Sasquatch areas. I'm looking to start putting GPS locations on there to see if I can find a clue or something to that. And that's about it.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. The sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking eight bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.